Hello, so in this video I'm going to take you through how to write a 10-mark essay. So 10 marks is AO1, AO just stands for Assessment Objective, and AO1 is Knowledge and Understanding. So when you write your 10-mark essays, that's what you're going to be focused on, getting across to the examiner, to the marker, as much of your knowledge and understanding of the material as you can. So I'm going to take you through the steps to either get started if you're quite new to doing these, or I'll give you some tips as well on improving them if you've done a few but you're struggling to get up into the top band of marks. Okay, so you probably know this already, but it's worth going through again. A 10-mark answer in the exam will require you to do 18 minutes of writing. Now, it's not always going to shake out to exactly 18 minutes. If you find you can do them a little bit quicker than that, that's not a problem. I would say anything between 15 and 19 can be about right. If you're going much over that, then you're probably writing too much, because remember, you've got to fit in your AO2s as well, your 15s, and they can be a little bit more difficult. The way you recognise a 10 marker is it's always going to start with the word examine. That is your command word. And I'm going to be taking you through exactly what that means, what that's looking for. Length, it's going to vary. I think usually they end up being between 3 and 4 paragraphs, but that's going to depend on what the question is. Sometimes you might find that you do more shorter paragraphs. Occasionally, if it's a question that's asking for 2 specific things, you can do it in 2 paragraphs. But I would say 3 to 4 is about the average. The number of paragraphs is not something that I want you to get very hung up on. Neither is the length of what you're writing, because content is far more important. And on that subject of content, I think it's really, really important, because you have got limited time. This is not going to be a very long essay. There's no need for an introduction. It's not going to take you anywhere that's going to get you a lot of marks. And also for a 10, there's no need for a conclusion, because you're not concluding anything. You're not having an argument. Once you've run out of things to say, you stop. So you don't need a conclusion on a 10 marker. All right, let's move on. So this word examine, it's really, really important that you know what this means, because it comes up in every 10 marker. So what it really means is explain in detail. So you're going beyond just saying what you know, you're going beyond just regurgitating your notes into your essay. If you're going to get up to the highest levels, you have to go further than that and do more. So a word that I think is helpful is this word unpack. The examiner wants you to unpack whatever it is you've been asked to talk about. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to write down everything you know about that topic, because it's going to depend on the question. But within the confines of the question, it means you're going to pull out as much meaning as you can. The reason we call it unpacking is because you're going to imagine like that you're unpacking a bag. You're taking things out. What else is in there? What else can you say? The way to do this, I would say, is probably 3 main things: examples, scholars, reasons. Examples always help you explain yourself. Scholars, most of the time, are going to be relevant to most of your essays. There'll be times when that's not true, but I would say the majority of them are going to be based around at least one scholar. And reasons as well. If a certain belief exists, why does that exist? Why is something true? So that's what you want to be putting in. When you write in your paragraphs in your AO1 essay, think about, what else can I say? Have I unpacked this? Have I gone into detail? So below is a description of what level 5 looks like. So this is 9 or 10 out of 10. And the most important bullet point I would say here is the first one. Knowledge and critical understanding is accurate, relevant and fully developed in breadth and depth, with very good use of detailed and relevant evidence, which may include textual or scriptural references where appropriate. It's not always going to be appropriate, and I'll say more about that in a few minutes. But what this is basically saying is, to get 9 or 10 out of 10, you have to have included everything you could reasonably expect to be included within your 18 minutes. Now, the examiner knows that 18 minutes is all you've got, so they're not going to be expecting hours and hours of work, because you haven't got hours and hours. But it's about the best use you make of your 18 minutes. If there's obvious things you've missed, if you're putting things down and not explaining them, if it reads like a bunch of notes instead of an essay, very unlikely you get this level. You need to get familiar with the levels, and this is something that, again, I'm going to speak about in a minute. Okay. So I've put down here some variations of what examine questions can look like, what 10 markers can look like. This is not an exhaustive list. That means that there will be ones that come up that I haven't thought of, but generally this is the wording. So you can see that there's some subtle differences here. So if we take, let's say, the first two, examine the key features of whatever, that's just asking you to unpack the basics of something. So that might be an ethical theory, it might be one of the arguments for the existence of God, it might be an aspect of Christianity. That's a nice question because it's straightforward. The second one, these are a little bit trickier because you have to spot that this is what it's asking. Examine why, or sometimes it's examine the reasons for. Now they can ask this, and they will drop these in from time to time. You don't need to answer it in a massively different way, but you just need to think, okay, what are the reasons? Why is this true? I will take you through a little bit of planning when we look at that will help you with that. The rest I'm not going to go through, but you just need to know that there are some possibilities, and particularly the last one. This comes up quite often in ethics. So examine, it could be something like how natural moral law makes moral decisions. You should illustrate your answer with reference to, it could be abortion, theft, lying, one of the ethical issues we've studied. So you have to look out for that, because if they ask you to relate it to a particular ethical issue and you don't, that really limits what marks you can get. Right, planning. I'm a big fan of planning. I think it can really help. It can help you keep on track. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a really quick way that won't take a lot of time away from your writing. So this is, I think, all you need in a 10-mark plan. What's going to go in each paragraph, and this can literally be one word. Might be a little bit more than that, but I probably wouldn't go beyond 3 or 4. Who are your key scholars? So who is it that you need to talk about? Sometimes that will be in the question, but sometimes it won't be. And how many paragraphs do you need? Like I said before, it's probably going to be something between 2 and 4. I think it's well worth spending about a minute to a minute and a half just thinking about what are the basic ingredients going to be of your essay, and then just jotting down super quickly what you need. That could go a long way towards helping this essay stay on the topic that it's on and stay on the question. You don't want to drift. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by this. I've done 2 tiny little plans here for 2 different 10-mark questions. So I've done an ethics one and I've done a Christianity one. The ethics one, examine the key features of Aquinas' natural moral law. You've probably written this essay already at some point. If I was writing it, this would be my plan. Paragraph 1, reason and hierarchy of souls. I'm not going to write out hierarchy of souls because I don't need to. It's my plan. It's just to remind me. Paragraph 2, I'm going to unpack the primary precepts. Paragraph 3, I'm going to unpack the secondary precepts. That's it. That's all you need in that essay. Don't need double effect, don't need proportionalism, because they're not really key features of natural moral law. But reason, the primary precepts and secondary precepts are. So that would be my plan. I've done a slightly longer one, but it's still only 3 points for this one. Examine why there are differing views within Christianity about the authority of the Bible. Now look at the question. It's asking examine why there are different views, not just what are the different views. what are the reasons for the different views? So I could say one reason is because some Christians believe in biblical inerrancy, they believe in sola scriptura, whereas other Christians don't. That's a fact, but it's also a reason, so bear that in mind. And there I'm going to name check Luther. I'm going to talk about fundamentalist Christians because that's a particular group. Paragraph 2 I'm going to make about the Catholic Church, which I've abbreviated to RC, because the authority of the Bible has to have a relationship with the Church for Catholics. And then paragraph 3 I could write about different views of inspiration, social gospel movement, process theology. They don't see the Bible as inspired in the same way as fundamentalists do, so that's another reason. But that's all I'm going to go with for my plan, and then I'm going to unpack it as I write. Alright, so what I've got next... Alright, so what I've done for you here is an example of how not to do it. So this is not a very good opening paragraph. This is for the natural moral law question. A key feature of Aquinas' natural moral law is that it's based on reason. The hierarchy of souls shows that humans are at the top. Aquinas therefore says it's obvious to humans what to do to be good. Natural laws come from God, and Aquinas argues that human reason makes it easy for us to figure out what they should be. Now, there's nothing in that paragraph that's inherently wrong or bad. It's all accurate, it's all true. It's just that it's not enough. So I would say as a paragraph, that's too short, it's vague, it's not unpacked, and the key terms for it are not explained. So for example, I've talked about the hierarchy of souls, but I've not said what the hierarchy of souls is. And I don't need to go into a huge amount of detail on it. I just need to show that I understand what that is and how it fits into the bigger picture, which I haven't really done here. So this would be a much better opening paragraph. A key feature of Aquinas' natural moral law is that it's based on reason rather than scripture. This is because Aquinas believed that God's laws had to be clear to everyone, regardless of whether or not they had read the Bible. So the reason that's better straight away is because I'm saying why it's based on reason and why that's important. Just saying that it's based on reason without showing any understanding of why or why that matters, that isn't going to get you very many marks. So then I go on to talk about the hierarchy of souls. I mentioned that it's an Aristotelian idea, so it comes from Aristotle. That's not a huge deal, but it's again just showing that I understand where it comes from and how it fits in. Aquinas therefore says it's obvious to humans what to do to be good because we can all reason that there are certain ways to behave that enable us to be happy. I'm showing that that belief has got a reason behind it, and that's really crucial because that's your examining, that's your unpacking. And then in the last line, natural laws come from God, and Aquinas argues that human reason makes it easy for us to figure out what they should be. For example, we want to stay alive, so we should be able to reason that killing is wrong. And then from there, I can segue quite nicely into my second paragraph, which, if you remember from the plan, is going to be about the primary precepts. So straight away I've set that up. Alright, so finally, just a few tips to help you to get really good at these. First thing, really important, you need to get used to doing them without notes and without the book. Now, if you're in the lower six and you're still quite new to these, you might want to work towards that as a goal. If you're in the upper six, you really need to be doing that pretty regularly by now, because the fact is, in the exam, you won't have your books, you won't have your notes, you'll only have your brain, and you've got to be able to do it from that. It's also a dead giveaway when I read 10-mark answers and I can see big chunks of the textbook. All that shows me is that you're able to copy out of the textbook. It doesn't show me anything about what you can actually do with the ideas. Second thing I would do is, again, probably a bit of a difference between lower six and upper six, depending on your skill. Work towards writing them in exam conditions. Work towards being able to get a nice tight 18 minutes so that, again, you're familiar with what you're going to have to do in the exam. Don't worry about them all being the same length. When I write 10 markers, sometimes they end up being quite short if it's a very specific question. If it's a broader question, they can be a bit longer. There's no set length. Don't worry too much about, oh, I think it's too long, I think it's too short. The content is what matters. I think something that comes out of GCSE is you get very used to using quotes and you feel like quotes have to be in everything. They actually don't. Again, it very much depends on the question. You'll probably find with Christianity, if you can quote a little bit of relevant scripture, that's good, that's useful, but don't do it just for the sake of it, and don't feel like every essay has to have quotes in it. Sometimes if you can just explain in your own words what a scholar thinks, that's fine, that's just as good. RTQ, read the question. I've put ×3 there because in an exam that's always what I would recommend. Read it 3 times so that you know for sure what it is asking you and answer what you are asked. The number of times people answer what they want the question to be rather than what it actually is, massive way to lose marks. Another thing, finally, that I think is really good for you to do is get really familiar with using the levels of response. You've all got them, either in your folder or in Teams and Class Notebook. Mark your own, self-assess. Those levels of response are the same for every 10-mark question, whether that's Christianity, ethics or philosophy. If you can get a sense for where you are and then work on just kind of pushing yourself up through those levels, that's a really good thing to do to be independent and to improve these on your own. But the best advice I can really give you is learn by doing. The more of these you do, the less scary they will seem, the more familiar you will get with them. It's like any other skill, it will come more naturally to you. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope that's been helpful. Any questions, you can get hold of me, you can contact me through Teams, and I'll be happy to help you out.